Hi, this is George Alger, and welcome to this segment of Our Ventura TV. Today's guest expert is Jeff Lambert, who is with us from the city of Ventura, and he's the Community Development Director. Welcome, Jeff.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Jeff, tell us a little bit about your role.
Sure. I'm the Community Development Director, so I report directly to the city manager. I'm one of the 9 or 10 department heads, and I have under my responsibilities planning, which is sort of long-range land use planning. What's the future of the city from a development perspective? Building and safety, which actually issues permits for new construction, and then economic development. And the role of that group is to actually try to solicit new investment from an economic perspective into the city of Ventura.
It sounds like so many important areas. I mean, you have a substantial staff to help you?
Yeah, I have a staff of about 35,
Okay.
so a relatively lean staff for that much responsibility, but we get a lot done.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, so speak to us a little bit about what the main things are going on right now with community development.
Sure. We've had several years of economic downturn, and so the reality is we didn't see a lot of development happening over that period of time. But over the last year or two, we've seen a lot of increase in development. So, for instance, last year we issued about 750 residential unit permits, which is by far more than we've issued in a long, long time.
Wow.
Maybe more than we've issued in the last 5 years combined. So we're seeing a lot of pent-up demand for development that people couldn't afford to build years ago. And now that the economy is turning around, a lot of that's happening. And so the development is really about 2/3 residential apartments, multifamily, about 1/3 of it is single family, and then we have some key commercial projects that are also happening, particularly the Community Memorial Hospital's building.
Right.
Big deal.
Yeah.
Very important investment to the city. CMH years ago thought of moving someplace else, and they decided to reinvest in the midtown of Ventura, and that's a huge economic shot in the arm for us. So we're actively partnering with CMH to see if we can sort of capitalize on that investment and see other development happen around CMH, which would be important. One of the things we're looking at is building a new parking structure adjacent to the new hospital that would actually allow some redevelopment of property along Main Street. And also VCMC, the county hospital's in construction mode as well. So there's something like $500 million, and a billion with a B, that are being invested in that area right now. So we've begun to call that a wellness district, really trying to capitalize on becoming a known location for healthcare and wellness in Ventura County and beyond. So that's a really important part of what's happening. From a development perspective, I would say the second piece of development that's important is area around what we call Focus Area 1, which is sort of the area around our auto center. As most cities, auto dealerships make up a huge part of our sales tax revenue. And the dealerships also had a couple bad years of not making a lot of sales. And we lost a couple dealers during that time frame. We're trying to grow the dealerships back so that we can maintain that revenue from a sales tax perspective. But we're also looking at building a new road and maybe attracting other kinds of destination retail that would happen behind the dealership that would actually bring a lot more energy to that area and hopefully sell more cars.
Okay. Yeah. I'd like to touch on the residential development for a moment here. I'm just wondering, are all these residential permits that are for single homes, are they for one-off houses, or is there more actual communities being developed?
It's more the latter.
Okay.
There are some one-off houses. Ventura, in 2005, when we adopted our general plan, we made it very clear that our goal was to develop within the city's existing limits. We didn't want to push development onto agricultural land. We didn't want to push development onto our hillsides. We wanted to maintain, so we have this infill first strategy, which is to fill up the vacant land within the city first. So most of that development is happening in that vacant land. A lot of that's out in the Wells-Saticoy community, which is in the city, but it's sort of at the edge. And then there's some pockets. There's quite a bit of projects that have been approved on the west side of the city where there's some vacant land there. Some of it's agricultural conversion. Some of it is industrial land that doesn't really make sense for industrial anymore. And then there's pockets of development. We have quite a bit happening in downtown and a little bit happening sort of in the midtown community between downtown and the CMH construction happening in the new wellness district.
Good.
Yeah.
Speak a little bit how you balance the interests of those in the community who would prefer to see minimal development and those who consider that we have room, we have space, let's do more development, it's better for the economy.
It's really a couple things. One, we actually have a very low vacancy rate in our residential right now. Our vacancy rate is about 2.3. any vacancy rate below 5 begins to be difficult for people to be able to find a place to live. So we're well below that. So we're in sort of a dangerous area when it comes to vacancy. What that does is it increases the cost of units. So our apartment rents have gone up by 7% in the last year alone. And that's because we haven't delivered any new product. So part of the issue of development and the answer to people who don't want to see a lot of development is, where are their kids going to live if they can't afford to live here and there's no place for them to move to? So that usually resonates, because we don't want all of our graduates to leave college or leave high school and not be able to come back after college. I heard a very important fact at Cal State Channel Islands not too long ago, where something like 88% of their graduates want to stay in Ventura County.
Wow.
We don't have enough jobs for that many people graduating, so we have to grow our economy as well. I think the other part to say on the development perspective is, development really is investment in Ventura. And if people aren't investing in Ventura, cities don't stay stagnant. They either grow and get better, or they start declining. So development is a way of helping to make sure that we don't decline, that we continue to see movement. But we also have to do it in a way that's protecting our neighborhoods. And I think one of the messages we also give people is, we're developing in areas that have potential for development, but we're also protecting the residential communities that are already there. We're not seeing the midtown residential areas being converted to multifamily. We're protecting those residential areas. And I think most of the time when you tell people, here's all the areas that we're not going to see any development, and your neighborhood's going to stay the way it is today, but we're going to try to focus development in other areas, that helps them know that at least their area is not being impacted, and they're not going to see change in their neighborhood, because that's usually one of the reasons people are concerned about development, is
right.
Change in their neighborhood, which they like and respect and don't want to see change.
Of course.
Yeah.
Can you comment on that property near the Ventura County Fair Grounds? I understand that at one point there was a new hotel that was going to go there.
Yeah, there was an Embassy Suites Hotel approved for that site. The way these approvals work, they often have expiration dates, and they only last for so long and then they expire. That approval expired. We really tried to see that developer go forward, but at the time we were trying to get them to build, there was no funding and no financing for new hotels. So they're now coming back in. The same developers come back with a new hotel proposal. It's now a 4-star Hilton, which we're very excited about. It's going through the design review process now. We're hopeful that it will be approved sometime in 2015 and be under construction in early 2016. And it's about 130 or 40 room hotel with a full-size restaurant and small meeting space. And our goal is to really use that hotel to really celebrate its connection to the beach, because it's the last prime property on our beachfront for the city, and we want to make sure we get the highest quality product there as possible, because we really want to celebrate that prime location. There's not a lot of those locations left in California.
Good.
Yeah.
And actually, touching on the residential area for a moment again, are there many areas that are not on the far east end that you can't put a whole development in?
But not single family. There's really very little land except for the east end that you can actually develop single family, because most of it's kind of infill areas that are surrounded by development. There is a proposed project in the hillside above Ventura High School. It's the only part of the hillside that's actually in the city limits and is zoned for residential developments. We have a developer that's in the early stages. They're trying to propose 50 luxury homes. And one of the things, as we talk about economic development, that we hear from businesses that we try to attract to Ventura is they often go where their executive wants to live. And where they want to live is, the place has to be great, but they have to have a housing product that they want to buy. So having executive housing or higher end housing is important for our economic development strategy. We hear it from the hospital, where doctors want to go, and that's sometimes it keeps them from hiring new doctors, because there's not a place in Ventura for them to live. And so we're excited about that project. It's challenging. Hillside development in Ventura is not easy. There's a large community below that's looking at this very carefully, but we're in the very beginning stages of the process. I'm sure we'll do a full-blown environmental impact analysis, and it will take us a year or two to go through this process. But we're hopeful that might deliver some executive housing, which is single family, that would be available to that kind of a buyer in the future.
Good. And I'd like to touch on economic development from a business perspective. Is there a strategy in place to try to cultivate more business or new business in Ventura?
Yeah, we have an economic development strategy that we adopted a year and a half ago. I think May will be 2 years since we adopted it. It's a 5-year strategy. We've actually did it in such a way that it's renewed every year, and we always update it based on what's new. We tried to address that strategy based on our current assets. So we basically looked at what do we have going for us and how do we build on those things. Like hospitals, we have all that investment in hospitals, so one of our strategies is to try to grow medical related jobs. We don't have a lot of agriculture in Ventura, but we're adjacent to a lot of agriculture. So having a food-based job strategy is good. We have a very strong manufacturing job base in Ventura. How do we grow those companies? It's a pretty broad strategy, but it's also focused on sort of 3 things. One is to sort of protect the businesses that are here. So it's retaining the jobs we have, growing the jobs we have by helping those businesses grow, and then also attracting new jobs into Ventura by trying to attract new companies here. We have a company called Silver Bay Seafood. They're an Alaska-based company. They've bought a property in Ventura. They're going to build a squid processing plant. It's really a deep freezing plant, so they're going to be able to bring the squid directly from our harbor. And you might know we're one of the biggest squid harbors in the world. Be able to quickly deep freeze that squid and send it all over the world. It's a very exciting company for us. I'm happy to say, because we tend to have a reputation that we don't process applications as quickly as other cities do. This was an applicant that came and had a very aggressive schedule. We did such a good job meeting their aggressive schedule that they were unable to meet our schedule. So we were better than they were, and that's a good story I like to tell often.
Yes.
That sometimes we're able to really move when it's a priority project that we want to make sure happens in a timely manner. And their goal is to make sure they're open in time for squid season. They're very driven by a seasonal deadline. So that's a proud moment for us. CMH is also a proud moment that we were able to attract them to stay in Ventura and build that product in the middle of our midtown area.
By the way, on the CMH hospital and just the wellness areas you're referring to it now, would this be amongst the biggest development that's ever gone on in Ventura at once?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, by far the biggest development we've seen in our city. Obviously the county facilities off of Victoria when they were built were big, but CMH by far for the last several decades is the biggest thing we've seen for a long time. And a really great way of showing some economic vitality in our midtown area.
Yeah.
You can imagine that a lot of the midtown area, that stretch of Main and Thompson is, it's sad. There's a lot of vacancies or sort of underutilized properties because there's just not enough demand for that long stretch of retail. Adding CMH and perhaps some other residential around there hopefully will support some of that retail in our midtown area.
Yeah. Well, Jeff, we're just about out of time. 2 things. Is there a website that people could go to get more information?
Sure.
And do you have a summating message you'd like to convey to the viewers?
Sure. The website is community development. So go to the City of Ventura /community development, and under that is a page called Pending Development Project. So if people are interested in what's happening from a development perspective, there's a map so they can look at the part of the city they're interested in and click on the project and get information. I think that's a really important place for people to go. For a summation, I think it's important to understand the context in which we see development this year. It's not like this year is going to set the stage for this much development forever, because Ventura is a special place. We like to preserve our residential neighborhoods. We have an economic balance that we want to preserve, and we're really at the edge of the economic sort of circle of Los Angeles. So the likelihood that we're going to have this kind of pace of development in the long term is probably relatively limited. And our goal, from my perspective, is to balance residential development with commercial development so that we have that good balance. We actually have the highest percentage of our residents of all cities in Ventura County that also work in the same city. That's called jobs, housing balance, and that's actually an important way of keeping a healthy vitality in a city to make sure people live and work in the same place.
Cool.
Yeah.
Jeff, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Happy to be here.
This is George Alger signing off with this segment of Our Ventura TV. Until we meet again.